how could they use something like Plant Jammer in that customer journey to attract customers, to connect with customers, to keep customers, and of course, to convert customers?
Yeah. So first of all, when it comes to traffic, people to your site, actually the most important thing these days is less what Google wordsmithing exercises of SEO. It's much more of engagement. So do you get people to actually engage to the site and be involved? That's what's really important. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So if you put on a regular recipe, bounce rates are really high. So it means people go in, they don't click anything, and they go out again. And that is not going to help you. It's actually going to penalize you, according to Google.
We see cilantro and we go, I don't have any of that. Next.
There you go. And you'll go back to Google to another beautiful picture, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you cannot just compete with a beautiful picture and a recipe, but you can if you engage people.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where I, Selena Knight, share strategies, interview retail revolutionaries, and delve into the minds of e-commerce experts to help you grow a profitable, independent retail or e-commerce business. If you're stuck in a rut, or if you feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've overachieved all of the things that you've set out to and are wondering what to do next, or how do I even make this better? I know that you're going to love today's episode. Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. When it comes to the customer journey, there are 6 points. You've got to find your customers, you've got to catch your customers, you've got to connect with them, you've got to convert them, which is the part we quite often skip straight to, and then you have to keep them. I like to say you need boomerangs, the people who come back again and again, and you need the drum beaters, the people who tell everybody about you. And whether it's working with one-on-one clients or with my students inside of Scale Your Store, I am always looking at ways that we can keep that customer engaged, how we acquire them, and different ways to keep them engaged. Plus, I am a huge fan of sustainability. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I had an eco-friendly baby boutique. I was one of the founders of sustainability and in the industry here in Australia. And so when I heard about Plant Jammer, yes, Plant Jammer, I had to get Michael Haase onto the show to tell us a little bit more. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Selena. So happy to be here.
So sustainability, one of my favorite things. Marketing, one of my favorite things. Put them both together. I'm sure we're going to be able to talk for a while. Before we jump in and talk about all the ways that I think people can use Plant Jammer to help their customers and help themselves, tell us a little bit about what Plant Jammer is, what it does, and how you even got started.
Absolutely. So basically, we help people cook. It's really that simple. Food is this amazing space within sustainability where it's within our own realm of control to actually do something, to actually make a difference. If you go to energy or minerals and metals and other commodities, then suddenly you need infrastructure and big regulation. But in food, it's just us and our habits. And I always found that fascinating. So I thought, how can we empower people in cooking more sustainably, both for themselves and for the planet, and that's how we started Plant Jammer. So basically, how do we inspire people? And what we build is a different way of identifying a recipe for you tonight. We make that decision, every day, and it can be stressful. So we all know the habit of searching on Google and getting 2 million results, and then finding the first one with pine nuts that you don't have, and the next one with broad beans that you don't know what is, and then you make spaghetti bolognese once again, right? So we thought we can do something smarter. So we basically trained an AI to cook, learning about food pairing and things that go well together. And from that, you get an experience where you rather talk to your recipe. So basically, what you do is you tell it, I don't like cilantro, and it substitutes cilantro for other suggestions. You pick that one, and you go through the journey of actually cooking with what you have and what you like. So you don't end up with a usual spaghetti bolognese, and that way you can cook with what you have in front of you, whether it's a branded food product or it's what you have in your fridge. It's basically right there in front of you, and empowers you to really do the things you want to do. And what we have is basically this product that we put on what's called an iframe or a widget that you can any food brand, blogger, media outlet or retailer can put on their website. And then they engage people in stopping food waste and cooking more. That gets them engaging, and that gets us to understand our customers better and connect.
It's funny because people are probably thinking, why has she got someone who makes recipe software on the show? But trust me, guys, it's worth sticking with me here. And I have to just pop in and say, spaghetti bolognese is not the go-to in our house. It is nachos. Something with nachos. Anything that's in the fridge, on top of some corn chips, cheese, and salad, and that's our go-to. And a bit of guacamole.
That works.
All right. So one of the things just something you said just there, just a minute ago, was when we want to make change in the world, quite often we think big, like energy and electricity, but even something as everyday as buying clothes, in my opinion, still takes a lot of effort. Like if you want to go to slow fashion, it's not something you can just go to the local mall and get. You have to do the research. You have to find the places that sell it. You probably have to buy it online. So there's all these barriers in something as simple as clothes buying. But when it comes to food, whether we're talking organic or not, at the end of the day, you're going to be eating and buying food every single day. So this is like one of those really little changes that we can make in our day that can make big changes. And I have to say that I joined a meal planning app a couple of years ago, simply for the reason that you just said. I did not have any more mental bandwidth to think of what the freaking heck we were having for dinner that night.
There you go.
And I'm sure I'm not the only person. So tell me a little bit more about how retailers in particular, retail and e-commerce store owners, could use something like Plant Jammer to help attract customers and to help keep customers and to help connect with customers and hopefully get them converting as well, whether you sell food goods or not.
Yeah. So first of all, when it comes to traffic, people to your site, actually the most important thing these days is less what Google wordsmithing exercises of SEO. It's much more of engagement. So do you get people to actually engage to the site and be involved? That's what's really important. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So if you put on a regular recipe, bounce rates are really high. So it means people go in, they don't click anything, and they go out again. And that it's not going to help you. It's actually going to penalize you, according to Google.
We see cilantro and we go, I don't have any of that. Next.
There you go. And you'll go back to Google to another beautiful picture, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you cannot just compete with a beautiful picture and a recipe, but you can if you engage people, if you really connect with them and you listen to them and you help them shine in their homes. So this is a way for us to, first of all, get all the traffic you go in and actually get them to engage with you and you create value in their lives. And then with that, they get engagement, which means Google starts understanding the fact that your site is working and people are staying on it, which will attract more traffic. And that's really the core of this. And food is such a powerful thing for this because for everyone, food is relevant. And if you really engage them on this topic, you build their trust.
So I know that I feel like I'm so old when I say this, back in the day when I had my stores, and we're talking 2008, we used to post a blog and we would always put recipes up especially because we were dealing with new mums, we always used to put quick recipes or baby recipes, and they got ridiculous amounts of engagement to the point where we used to have chefs come into the store and like food specialists, allergy specialists, all those kinds of things come into the store and do workshops, because food has that ability to create an atmosphere, but it also can create negativity. If you're constantly stressing about what you're going to cook and whether you've got the right things. And for me, that was never the situation I wanted new mums to be in. I always wanted to be able to give them the resources, even if it wasn't something I sold, that would make their lives easier. So obviously you've got brands that are using this to do exactly that. Can you give us any examples of brands that don't sell food, but use Plant Jammer to build that connection and engagement with their customers?
Absolutely. So we have, as an example, we have a few yoga studios who are engaging with this. Mm-hmm. So when you are your yoga studio, basically you're working with health and you're working with, focusing on both your mental and physical sort of awareness and health. And here food is quite fundamental. It's not really present in a yoga studio as such, but it's part of conversations. And for that reason, for them, what they're getting is basically another piece of service that creates more trust and creates another piece of value for their visitors to their yoga studio. It's only for their members, but it's a special service that they get available. And what it attracts is basically people who keep on coming back. They have another reason to remind themselves that I should probably go to the yoga studio once more a week, because I'm going back to this site, once every other day.
I feel like food is one of those things that we all comment on. We all want to validate our own choices, whether it's the fact that I hate cilantro or whether it's the fact I absolutely love nachos. Everybody wants to be able to say their little piece and validate, I guess, the way they eat or they don't eat. And I know that I will be, if you're listening, Stephanie, I'm talking about you. One of our Scale Your Store students, she is always posting these recipes for these ridiculously gorgeous looking cakes that I know I would never eat because they're full of fat, they're full of cream, but they look so good. And every time I see them, I have to comment on them.
Yeah.
So whether you're going to eat it or not, food just has this ability to make us talk and engage and communicate with each other and share. I expect that sharing recipes and sharing stuff that comes out of using Plant Jammer is a particularly efficient way of using the service that you provide.
Indeed. So what we found out works really well. People don't always want to be attached to their phones when they're in the kitchen, right? They want to be a little bit free. So that's something we needed to solve for a while, solving for sharing as well. So what we do is at the end of the journey, you actually get a PDF of the recipe, the picture, the ingredients, the steps, but also propose substitutes and propose other great spice matches to this if you want to, go a bit crazy with this recipe. And that way you can fully engage on this piece of asset that's actually less digital. You can print it out, but you can also just have it on your phone. And that's the asset that gets shared around, so that we don't nudge people to, stick to their phones all the time, also in their kitchen.
And when your phone goes dark, that is so frustrating. You've got your hands covered in flour and the phone goes, I use my iPad and the iPad goes dark and you're desperately trying to wake it up to read the next thing. I haven't yet mastered connecting my my Alexa to the recipes so she could read them out. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I reckon that's my next step. So what's the next step? What's the next step, Alexa? Tell me.
I think one thing on this note is all these sort of barriers to using online recipes are the reasons why basically 80% of people, they cook less than 10 different recipes a year.
No.
Right? So we're basically sticking to our habits really, really, really strongly in the kitchen. And there's a reason for that, because if you just look at it sort of from a sort of neural perspective for your brain, then basically we have this habit that we are accentuating every day. And every time we cook one of those 10 recipes, we do it again. It's easy and we have a busy life, and we have so much conceptual thinking happening in our lives all day, and finally we get to the kitchen and we just want to go on autopilot. So you don't need barriers at this point of your life. And right now there are barriers. We just talked about how it is to find a recipe on Google, right?
Yeah.
So getting that barrier down so that we can both have, an ease and breeze when we're cooking. And at the same time, cooking according to our health goals, according to our goals for sustainability. That's really important.
And what's in the fridge?
That's something that's worth spending a lot of time on.
Like sometimes I just want to know.
Exactly, because
I was going to say, we're just about to move house, and my goal is to eat everything in that fridge in the next 3 days. Well, not everything in the fridge, but I didn't want to do any shopping in the next 3 days. And so all week I've just been typing in random things to see what it would spit out that we could potentially eat. But the good thing is I've discovered recipes that I probably never would have tried before, just because I couldn't go back to the regular because we didn't have a specific ingredient. So one, it makes me feel really good that I've tried something new. And two, I've managed to not make that food go to waste. Haven't ended up getting to the end of the week and throwing it out. But I become engaged in the actual cooking process again. I was actually enjoying having all the things, being able to cook, putting it on the table, because I actually do love cooking, and then getting the feedback. Did we like this? Did we not like this? What would we change? What would we add? What would we not? All those kinds of things.
And it's tremendously important, if you look at the whole food chain, around a third of all the food that's being produced goes to waste. A third, right? That's a tremendous number. And of all that, when we think of food waste, we're all thinking, point at the restaurant down the corner where you see the garbage truck in the back, or the retailer. But actually, half of all food waste across the whole food chain, from farm all the way to our kitchen, half of all that food waste is happening in our kitchens. So we're actually the biggest source and the biggest opportunity of making a difference. That's actually happening in our homes. So it is tremendously important. And the exercise you're doing right now is an exercise most people should do on a regular basis, of trying to just cook with what we got. That's actually a really, really impactful behavior.
You just said then about at home, we are the biggest source of food waste. Do you have any data, or do you have any, I guess, anecdotal data that since COVID began, we are wasting more food, or are we using our food better? I put you on the spot there. We didn't talk about this before.
Yeah, no, indeed. I don't have strong data on this, but what has happened is that we have moved our sort of cooking, our food habits from out to home to a very large extent. And even though it looks like there's a lot of food waste in canteens and restaurants and out there, essentially all those establishments we used to use a lot, they've optimized for reducing food waste because it's expensive for them, and it's a big part of their business to make sure they have little food waste. Even they still have a lot, they're trying really hard. Whereas in our home, it's actually a quite small part of our budget. So once we move more cooking to the home, we are going to increase the amount of food waste across the whole food chain. And we're going to need to spend a lot more energy on that aspect of the journey. We've gotten aware of it because suddenly it's quite obvious, right? We see that it's more food waste on a daily basis as we're throwing it out. So it is creating greater awareness. But still, I would say at the balance of things, I would argue that food waste has increased across the whole food chain with the move to home, sadly. So
I think we do try and point the finger at both restaurants and grocery stores, but my next door neighbor is a chef, and I know that he knows the exact cost of every single recipe. It's weighed, it's measured. The tops and tails of the carrots go in to make stew or to stock. Like, they use as much part of the food as possible, because at the end of the day, it's dollars, and if they're on a budget, they have to make money. But for us, it seems so much easier to just throw out the leftovers because no one felt like eating them for lunch the next day.
I mean, never has food been cheaper. It's not that it's cheaper in dollars, but as our average income has increased in our society, food prices have not come along, and that just means that it's a much smaller proportion of our income, and that means we care a lot less about the tail of the carrot than we used to do.
That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm an economist of trade, and in economics, you talk about externalities, which is when my behavior impacts you, then I'm not inclined to as much do the right behavior. And that's exactly what happens here. It's food waste is an externality. It's basically, it has CO2 emission impact, it has water use impact. That's outside of sort of what I see. I just see the budget, and their prices not really reflecting the true costs. So we need to change more than just what our wallet tells us, basically.
And I think we get caught up in this idea of food miles or having to eat organic. Like, we get caught up in those externalities, which is, at the end of the day, yes, there's a food mile, but if you consume the food in its entirety, then that is better than getting something that's local that you end up throwing out because you were too lazy to get it out of the fruit bin.
Exactly. I'm really, really happy with the movement towards organic. I think it's great. But it does sometimes become a little bit of a get out of jail card, where it's like, I eat sustainably because I buy organic, but that's just not enough. At the end of the day, there's a lot of other behavior that's needed to truly eat sustainably. And reducing your food waste is probably the biggest one.
I have to say, having chickens was always a bonus. Then I never felt guilty about anything. And then having dogs comes as a very close second.
I have a 6-month-old toddler who is, starting to eat, so that food ends everywhere, and we need to get a dog just for that reason. So
just to get those scraps.
Exactly.
My dogs get the Sunday roast when all the carrot peelings and the pumpkin and everything. I get them all in a Thermomix, and I squish them all up and I boil them up, and we just call it dog soup, and the just vegetable soup all over their food, and they absolutely love it. But it's one of those things, coming from an eco background, I feel guilty every time I use a piece of plastic, or every time I throw something out, or every time I put one more thing in the compost bin. It's like this guilt that sits on my shoulders. My family gets so annoyed because I wash every plastic bag and reuse them. And I quite often say that people are very eco-friendly until they actually have to do something, or they have to spend money. And then it all goes out the window. But this is something that's so small. And to me, taking it back to how you use it in your business, the engagement that you get when you talk about food, it doesn't matter who your customer is. Everybody has to eat. Everybody has a feeling about food. And I love that you can create a conversation out of nothing, like out of 3 ingredients, you can create a conversation.
Completely. And I think what's key is, if your core business is not within food, or even sometimes if your core business is within food, it might not be within making recipes. So, it can be a lot of work to, find the chefs or test the recipes and do all that work. And when you write up good and making sure that you're not creating something that is actually detracting your brand because it was a bad recipe, right? So it can be stressful to have to also cover that base. Even though it's a good growth hack, it might be a difficult thing to do while you're doing your normal business, right? Where you have plenty of work to do if you're a small, medium-sized company. And that's where it might make sense to find a partner who does this for a living, and then you can rather leave it there. You create the conversation, you engage in the conversation, but you don't have to go meticulously creating the recipes and doing all that quite hard work of making sure that things fly.
We talked about traffic earlier, and the first thing as you were talking that jumped into my mind was jump to the recipe. Like, people have built out these blogs to make you spend longer on the page. And I don't want to see that. I just want to read the recipe. And so my first thought is always, where's the jump to the recipe button? And it's usually in some obscure place and I have to go find it. And then I go straight to the recipe. The first thing I look at is, do I have all the ingredients? My next thing is, how much crap is in there? Is it stuff that our family would eat? Or, is it full of butter or oil and all those kinds of things? And then I look at the comments. That's the next part I look, because I want to know if I've gotten to the point where this looks good, the next thing I want to do is see whether the recipe actually works. If I went and put Plant Jammer on my website and used it to build that engagement, to drive that traffic, is there the opportunity to comment on things as well?
There is. So basically what happens during the journey is you go through the journey, and then at the end of the recipe, you're asked, would you recommend this to a friend? And then after that, you can write a free text comment further. Right now, we're basically just sharing that back to the brand, so they know, the people who are having it on their site, they know what are my users saying. Do they enjoy this or not? But it actually makes a lot of sense what you're saying here, saying how about bringing it back to the audience itself, because it can be quite empowering. So I'm writing that. You're writing that one down.
I think I gave you some free tips earlier on too.
Milestone plan. Yes, indeed. Definitely, this is a good one. I'll plug that up, because we do capture it, and it's been quite exciting, because so far this is this thing called Net Promoter Score, which basically where you ask people, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend, and then you could score from 0 to 10.
Yes.
And a good Net Promoter Score is around 50. We are having 75 now among our end users, so really, really high, awesome. Which is really nice. So it is because it's a unique journey where you personalize, you really feel like it's yours. But we need to put that stuff in front of the next user so that they understand that there's credibility to this. So thank you for the advice.
That's okay. I'm always good for advice. So tell me, if I am not a food-based brand and I put Plant Jammer on my website, what kind of data can I get out of it that I can then use to help me either market to my customers better, or product selection? What kind of data do I have access to?
Yeah, so there's three kinds of data. So the first round data is that we capture people's choices. We don't capture any personal data because of GDPR and privacy issues. So, but we do on an average basis capture what are the, so first there's a gastronomical data. So basically, what are the recipes that people picked? What are the ingredients they took? What are the ingredients they took out? What are the filters they added? So, who's vegan, who's gluten-free, who's not free, who wants
Oh,
to eat more
that's good data.
protein or more fiber, or yeah, so that tells you a lot about your persona, basically,
Yeah.
based on their choices within the journey. Then we have the net promoter score. So was this something people enjoyed? And then also a comment that about 10% actually of people who tried, they actually fill out the net promoter score and the comment, so you get a lot of data on top there. And then after the first few weeks of gathering net promoter score, so we know that people enjoy this, we convert over to actually link this straight to a survey that you yourself can ask people. So that the individual people who have on a website, we just link it up to a type form that's integrated in the experience. So you can ask, what are my 3 most important questions to ask my customers right now? And we ask that question just at sort of peak excitement, just as you're getting the recipe, where we know around 10% will actually answer. So it's basically a way to get 10% of your website visitors to answer the most questions you're dying to get answered from your customers. And you can rotate those questions on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis based on where you stand and what are the most important questions for you and your brand.
The marketing nerd in me loves the fact that you have placed that at the peak, like neurological part of the customer journey. But a lot of people don't think about that. I think a lot of people forget about the overall customer journey and how to put the right offer in front of the right person at the right time. Now, that right offer might just be the fact that I have some questions I need to get, but you were talking there about things like gluten, the filters, the vegan and the gluten-free. I just wanted to jump in and share a quick story about one of my old clients who has a skincare brand, and she discovered accidentally that her customers really resonated with vegan products. They didn't have to be vegan, but when she went and got the vegan certification, so I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get that. And when she started posting things like vegan recipes, her engagement went up, but then her sales went up when she got her vegan certification. She was just lucky to kind of find that out. She just found that out through conversation. But these are little things that make huge differences in your brand. For me, that would be part of the impact pillar. It's about building more than just a store. And when you know your customer that intimately, then the marketing that you put out makes it connects so much better, because you have firsthand knowledge of 70% of our customers are searching for vegan recipes. Maybe we need to look at getting some more vegan products in.
Yeah, totally. And there's so many layers to this when you start looking into those the dietary or health filters that we're adding, because one thing is just the classical health filters of vegan or gluten-free or the likes, where just excluding things. But you get even more because we're adding things like high on fiber, high in protein, right? And you start talking high in fiber, you certainly get another kind of grouping coming in, where it's it might be people with digestive issues, people who have certain issues with bloating and the likes, and suddenly you have other products you can consider if I have a big audience that actually has issues with their stomachs, and suddenly you're getting into another range of product development or communication around them, because you're learning something about your customers that you didn't know before. So yeah, food is really sort of your window into to people's lives in some ways, that you can then extrapolate on, particularly when you then can ask them tailored questions thereafter, where you sort of get to understand the why behind.
It feels to me like the hub of every piece of social media marketing that you would ever have to produce. When you have this kind of knowledge of what your customers like to eat, what they like to avoid, how often they're looking for recipes, how invested they are, and what products they have in their house. I feel like it becomes really easy to write a social media post when you have that level of intimate knowledge of your customer. But it doesn't matter if you're even selling shoes, because we're stripping it all back and saying what we're getting is what people connect with. And this is the stuff we all overlook. At the end of the day, what do our customers connect with? And marketing is all about getting customers to want what you sell. And you're going to do that through building connection.
Exactly. And I think one thing that I've learned throughout the six years of building this business is consistently when I try to describe the persona of our customers, I have a huge bias to make them look a lot like me. Right.
Yeah.
So we always think we're selling to ourselves, but we really are. We frequently are not, right? And that goes for me as well. And this is, getting this kind of data sort of inflow helps you challenge your own biases towards selling to yourself rather than really understanding your customer.
And also it changes as your business changes. Like as your business matures, I think the customers that you attract and the customers that you retain do tend to adapt, because what you start out at is never where you end up with 5, 10, 15 years later. You change, your values change, and quite often you adapt to what your customers want. So to me, this is a great way of keeping that finger on the pulse of who is actually engaging with my stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of understanding, is oftentimes, okay, if you have a direct to consumer, web shop where most of your trade is going that way through, you get a lot of data that way. But in many places, particularly in food, but also outside of food, you have a retailer in between you and your customer. And they're basically leaving you in the dark in some way or form, right? Because they have the direct connection. So if there's any way you can get around that wall and get to talk directly to your customer group, your personas, your target group, it's tremendously valuable. Just because if not, then you're just stuck with a supply chain where you're sort of over here and the consumer's over here, and there's a lot of people in between, meaning that every data you get is super filtered. But yeah, the direct connection is just super powerful in understanding.
And if you're a pure play e-commerce site, it is a great way of getting that insight and getting that connection when you're not able to speak to your customers one-on-one every single day.
That's it. And we all have big newsletter sort of signups and a lot of people sort of that are following our things, but then when we start asking them a few questions, we also get
crickets,
quite low answer rates, and it's quite frustrating. So exactly, and we need to find a way to get them to stop and think and want to help, because they do want to help. But if they get so many mails in their inbox that they just don't see yours, then you don't get the real data yourself. So we need to find ways to excite enough to get to that peak excitement where we get to answer rates that really gets us to understand our customers and engage with them.
So what's the next step for Plant Jammer? You're here, you're telling us about it. We found some great ways that you can use it, even if you're not a food-based business. What's next?
Yeah, so for us right now, the big next sort of step in helping people reduce food waste and cook more according to their own goals is meal planning. So going from right now, it's called empty your fridge, and the focus is on one recipe right now that I can make. But we're right now building the next product, which is focused on what if I want to have 3 to 4 different ones, and by the way, want to potentially link it directly up to an online retailer, so that you can sit down on Sunday or Saturday, make the plan for the week with a little interactive journey, click shop, get it delivered. So we really can solve that problem as well. So it's that's a solution we're solving for right now.
The marketer in me, the first thing I want to ask is, if I was an e-commerce brand and I was using Plant Jammer, is there an affiliate system if I can get people to sign up for the meal plans?
Yes, there will be. Exactly.
I am 100% all for different revenue streams in your business, even if you're in retail. And this is the kind of product that makes me so happy, because it is not going to be 99% of the time, it's not going to be in competition with what you sell. It's a win for you. It's a win for the customer. It's a win for Plant Jammer. It's a win for the environment. That's like a quadruple square win. And
love it.
it's another revenue stream that you don't have to do anything to get. You just have to genuinely be connecting with your customers and know that this is something that can help them out, and you can make money. And to me, it's one of those things where you make money, but your customer is more than happy to hand the money over. And this is the kind of thing that sets you apart from your competition. You might be selling shoes, and then all of a sudden you've got meal planning, and on the outside, people will be like, what the freaking heck are they doing selling a meal planning app? But when you've built this out, when you know what your customers want, it kind of makes sense, guys.
Yeah, and there's two kinds of affiliate models there to be aware of. So one of them is direct with the online retailer to say, okay, I have an audience and I kind of know what they want and what they're cooking, and I can help them serve a problem for them. And by the way, when I then deliver, stuff directly to Amazon Fresh, I get a kickback from them.
We don't have Amazon Fresh here in Australia yet.
There's other good online solutions. Yes. And the other one is the individual food brands. So basically, we already have a network of 500 different food brands across the globe that would be happy to be positioned when there's a pasta. Barilla really wants to be positioned as a pasta, right? Yep. So even if you're not going directly onto online retail, then just having one of those products in there, and that creates that affiliate marketing model.
Awesome. Okay, so if people are thinking, Sal's right, she's always out there with some random thing, and now I can see how putting recipes on my shoe website actually makes sense, where can they find more out about Plant Jammer? Plantjammer.com. So just to describe the name a little bit, so it has two words to it, right? So plant is because we're focusing a lot on sort of the nudge towards a plant-based diet. We do have meat and animal-based products, but we're really focusing on the nudging towards plant-based. And Jammer, because we think the mindset in the kitchen should be not so perfectionist and more like a jam session in music, where you're trying things out, experimenting, learning things about yourself, have some core rules that you go by as you do when you jam, but freestyle from there. So plantjammer.com. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. As I said, I got so excited when I could see the marketing opportunity, the customer connection, and a way to save the planet in our own little way as well. So thanks so much, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selinaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selinaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.